Welcome, everybody, to Righteous Savages podcast. I'm Dave Kemp, and tonight we're going to be spending some time with Terry Gwaltney from Integrity Roofing and Exteriors, and probably all kinds of other kind of businesses, but we're going to talk about leadership, business, faith. We're going to kind of get into all that kind of stuff, so enjoy. Stay with us. All right, Terry, we appreciate you coming down and hanging out with us tonight, and we're excited to kind of dig into this aspect of leadership. What we're doing with the Righteous Savages is we're trying to build a brotherhood of like-minded people. We're trying to inspire people to be strong and courageous in their faith, with their families, their marriages, everything that they're doing, because we feel like as men today in this culture, so many guys are kind of falling away from that leadership responsibility. And we're trying to build that here with us. And so somebody in your position, I think obviously is also leading and motivating and trying to be a mentor to a lot of people. So we kind of want to dig into that. So first, I think it's probably fitting if we get into your background just a little bit. I know you've probably done this portion like 5,000 times of tell me like what you do and stuff, but briefly as a business owner, just kind of give all of our listeners just a real quick brief of who you are, what you do, what your business is, and kind of what you offer through that.
Awesome. Well, first, it's great to be here. Excited. Obviously, very like-minded. Very, spot on from the fact that, we have a man crisis going on. And so getting men to be present, getting men to man up, getting men to show up, super important. So anything to move that forward, I'm all about that. So currently, my main focus at this point in my life is Integrity Roofing and Exteriors. So it's an exterior company. We operate in 3 different states. We're in Illinois, Kentucky, and Tennessee currently. And so everything to do on the outside of the home is primarily what we do. We have our hands in several things. We have a wedding venue, retreat center. That's kind of one of my passions right now. It's been a 20-year bucket list for me and my wife. And so the idea of when we bought what is now Legacy Farm is our mission statement there was creating memories, empowering families, inspiring legacy. And so the idea with that is to eventually build out enough lodging to be able to do 3-day, 2-night retreats, focused on parenting, and then focused on leadership development, business owners, as well as just people aspiring to be leaders. Of course, we have Home Renew, so that's kind of our remodeling arm. We bought that company about 10 years ago.
I heard about that.
Yeah. From a gentleman named Larry Addison. That was just a whole God thing as well, the whole setup on that. We weren't looking. We had a team member at that time that was going to church with Larry. That's kind of how we found out about it. Come to find out, we actually had some family members. He had married a cousin of mine, or his daughter, I think it was, had married a cousin of mine, which we had no clue. And so it was just kind of a total setup. So he ran his business very similar to the way we did, same values, and we thought that was just a great idea. And so that's turned out to be a real blessing as well. So those 3 things are primarily what we're in now. We do a couple of podcasts, have to do with leadership development and trying to help men grow. And of course, we just wrote our second book. The idea with that is to develop that out into a course. And I'm really passionate about that. I really believe that if we can get people that are in business as well as working in business to understand what their purpose is, that there's a purpose beyond the profit, there's a mission beyond the margin. That's where business owners can get their people highly engaged, which gives them a competitive advantage. But the reality is people show up when they feel like there's something to show up for. You got to give people a mission. You got to give them a mission worth following. If we can do that and people can find their place in that, it's amazing, I think, what we can do. Because everybody has a purpose. Everybody has a calling. Everybody has an assignment. Most people can't tell you what it is. And so at this stage in my life, the biggest purpose I have is to help other people discover theirs. And that's kind of what makes me get up every day.
Yeah,
so all those things have.
Yeah, it's so amazing how, especially when, looking forward, it's hard to see kind of where your future is really going to go. But looking back, you see where all the dots kind of connect.
Yeah.
And it seems like for a lot of people, especially involved in leadership, especially like this is like you probably – I'm going to guess here. You might not be the type of person that thought, when I get to the top of my business career, running integrity, I want to be the boss that sits in an office and fills out Excel spreadsheets all day and punches a calculator. Like this aspect, the leadership is like, this is like the gravy. Like this is probably what you were really meant to do all along. And the business, the success of that has just set you up to do this portion of what you're really called to do. I don't know if that's how you really feel, about it.
Yeah. Then, I think any good leader is willing to hire to his weakness, and I say good leader because you have to be secure enough to do that. Most people want to put people around them that they think that they're smarter than, and they can't really move the needle very much that way, but they feel better about themselves and they don't feel threatened. And so I have a ton of people around me that are, far more capable of what they're doing than what I am. And it allows me to focus on the things that, I'm really called to do, and that, that I have a gifting in.
That's awesome. Would you say that your faith at all drives your leadership style? I know with us at Tombstone Gun Range, we want to kind of have, as far as customer service goes, we are, and I think similar to you, we want it to be all about the customer experience. We want them to walk in. One of the main reasons we started a gun range was because there was gun ranges to go to around here, but you would show up and a bunch of 95-year-old guys would look at you weird, like, what are you doing here? And nobody likes that feeling, including me. And we hated it. And we wanted a place where you could walk in and people were like, hey, Terry, what's going on? Even if you weren't there to shoot, people just welcome you to be there. And we care like, hey, what can we do to help you? What do you need? We want you to feel like you are being served there. It's a servant's attitude, a servant heart. And for me personally, that comes from just my faith as a Christian. Like that's what God tells us to do. That's how we're supposed to treat people. And we're not perfect. I know, sometimes, bad attitudes slip in, but ultimately that's where our attitude of being able to serve people comes through. And I don't know how much that has affected your management and leadership style as far as customer service goes.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's been the biggest thing that shaped it, obviously. I don't think you have to wave, personally, I don't feel like you have to wave the flag. In other words, when you hear people talk about, well, are you a Christian organization? No, an organization doesn't have a soul, so you can't be Christian or non-Christian. So just like a church is made up of the people. It's not the building, it's the people that go to it. It's the same way in an organization. It really comes down to the people. And so, with me being a person of faith, most of the people that work for us are people of faith, but it's not a prerequisite to work there. But because it drives so much of what we do, you see it in our vision statement, you see it in our mission statement, you see it in our core values, you just see it in how we treat people. So our leadership style is servant leadership. So it's kind of an upside down play on typical corporate America. Mm-hmm. It's the pyramid turned upside down. So we tell people, you really want to be promoted. You understand, but being promoted means you have the responsibility to serve more people. It's not just I get the best parking spot, I get a C-suite, I get the best office, I get the, there's perks obviously that come with increased responsibility. It's not the driving force for that.
Yeah.
If you're going to run out of food at the event, you're the last one to eat. Yeah. It's kind of that kind of mentality. It really is kind of a Jesus style leadership if you go look at it.
Yeah.
And so, it very much drives everything that we do.
100%. What do you think, looking back, influenced you to have this type of business style, management style? Was it just your upbringing and just kind of who you were, or was there anybody else, any other companies that you looked at ahead of time before kind of really getting into this that you thought that made sense, or was it just something just in your soul that thought this is how we need to operate?
Yeah, I think it's probably a combination of all that. Early on, it wasn't necessarily, hey, that business, that model, let's kind of follow that. It was more, really, we've seen in particular industry we're in now that demands the majority of our time. It was Like if somebody could be honest in their dealing with an insurance company and they're dealing with a customer, do what they said they were going to do, kind of return back to the old handshake kind of doing business, and they could do it with excellence, there's some money to be made here because that's rare to find. And then I happened to be in a situation at the time when I actually got in the industry, and where I was at, I was seeing that for the first time up close and personal. And where I was at was having financial struggles and different things. And so it was almost like a forcing of my hand. I'm going to have to do something. And so we kind of took that knowledge and seeing that need and combined with just kind of our faith and how we believe you should just treat people and do business. Again, not perfect, but understanding that there's something bigger than ourselves, and there was a certain way to do business. You follow the golden rule. All the principles of leadership are all based in the Bible. I mean, sowing, the reap, all those, they're all in the Bible. They may be called different things, but there's nothing new under the sun. They're just the same principles repackaged. Now, as we got further along in business, I remember the juncture where I knew mentally that if I really want to grow this, I'm going to have to quit working so much in the business so I can work on the business. And that was a hard transition, but it was one of the biggest ones that we made. And it was at that juncture I really began to spend more time. And I didn't study businesses in our industry. We looked for inspiration from Nordstrom, from Ritz-Carlton, from Chick-fil-A. All of them were outside of our industry, but they all had something that they were doing that we wanted to replicate. They had a healthy culture. They were renowned for their customer service primarily. All those things intertwined, and those became benchmarks for what we thought we could do and do it differently.
Yeah. What do you think was probably one of the biggest obstacles you had as far as the roofing business, the roofing industry? Like, I know a lot of guys, just from talking to Larry and the struggles he had starting out a roofing business. It's employees and getting the right type of employees, or complaints from customers. I mean, what do you think? That's a tough, business. It's kind of like when you said a lot of times businesses that involve some guy walking up and saying, hey, it's going to cost $15,000 to fix your roof, and I need 7 of it right now. People are like a little like, I don't know if this is what I want to do, or I don't trust them a whole lot. Was there anything that, like, a big hurdle you had to tackle first in that?
Well, I think the biggest overarching hurdle that we had to overcome was the reputation of other people. And so if you go to the Better Business Bureau, in the top 10 complaints, you're going to find roofing companies, the most searched, the most complained about, and it's earned.
Yeah.
And so we had to fight a reputation that we didn't create. So that was your first hurdle. Mm-hmm. The second thing is a new business. You have to do it with no history. And so one of the ways that we combated that is from the very beginning, we hired the type of people that we felt like was going to exhibit integrity. So like now our recruiting process is much more refined. It's a selection process is what we call it, because we select 1 out of 100 people we talk to. And we spent a bunch of time. We was on an interview today. There's 3 of us interviewing a gentleman. And we spent an hour. It was his first interview. It was a phone interview. And he had worked for a very similar company, which is normally we don't even interview people like that. But we did in this case. And I said, I'm guessing at this point you're realizing that we're just a little bit different probably. He said, oh, yeah. He said, we're 50 minutes past my first phone interview. It lasted 10 minutes. And they hired him. Mm-hmm. So, well, we're going to select 1 out of 100. And, this is just the first phase. And we'll let you know if we decide to move forward. I said, because this is a whole lot more about knowing your backstory and knowing who you are when you stand at the door representing our brand than it is your experience, what you can do. We can teach you all that. We're trying to figure out, do you fit our culture and do you have the character that it takes to represent the brand that we've worked really, really hard to create. And so that was probably the biggest thing.
Do you feel like, because today there's so much, I know in my daytime job, we see so much turnover in people. We see so many people that are, in and out. They're looking for the next, we have a lot of students that come in engineering and from SIU, they come in, they spend a couple years and then they go get a job someplace else making more money. Do you feel like building that culture helps you with retaining people?
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt. No doubt. The the environment out there today is there's literally more jobs than there are people to fill them. It doesn't matter what the industry is. That's just the statistics as a whole. And we know what people are looking for. And being paid more is not the number one thing at the top of their list. And so if you can check those other boxes, because what happens is you go through as much, for instance, like we do to get somebody in. We tell them, I say, have you ever seen the Fockers? If you get invited to come in, you are inside the circle of trust.
That's good.
I said, and once you're inside the circle of trust, you hear our people talking about, man, it feels like a camaraderie. You know, it feels like a brotherhood. You know, it feels like a family. Well, it really does. And you don't just leave family. And because there's more of a connection there than a paycheck. So they're united more by purpose than they are paycheck. Most places that have a bad culture, the only thing that unites them is the paycheck. And then because everything else is so toxic, they'll never be paid enough, so it'll never be good enough. And so the one thing that unites them is probably the thing they're complaining about the most. And they're always looking for the next thing over the horizon. But it's all rooted in culture. You can take people that'll take a nonprofit where they don't even get paid. They'll give every waking hour they have to a cause that they may not be celebrated for, recognized for, or even get paid for. And they'll go home feeling satisfied, fulfilled, and content. And you can have the same thing in a job and actually get paid for it in your career, but you have to have the right culture.
Yeah. So sticking on this theme of the roofing business and how tough it is, when you guys are doing interviews and you're looking for good employees, it's got one of the number one attributes of a roofer has got to be you can't have, somebody that's not a real man. I'm trying to figure out the way to say this, but if you're going to get up on a roof and it's 105 degrees out and you're tearing off 3 layers, on an 80-year-old roof, this is going to be hard. This is going to be extremely physically demanding. How do you, is there anybody in America that still wants to do that job? Number one, and number two, how do you interview to find that? Are you interviewing guys that are coming from office jobs that just want to work for a good company and then get surprised, or how hard the work might be? Or, that's got to be one of the number one questions, or they're letting people know you need to know what you're in for, especially if you've never been involved in this. How do you kind of interview for that aspect?
Well, it's a mixture. I think most people think when they're thinking about, roofing, they're just thinking roofers. The reality is very rarely do I interview for the guys that are installing the roof. We have generally enough of those guys, and they're paid well enough. That's not an issue to find. Where I have issues to find is, the customer experience managers is what we call them. So they're managing the project. The hours are unpredictable as well. Mm-hmm. A lot of those guys don't have any experience. So, yeah, they may have come from an office job or something like that. So they have long hours. It's not necessarily as physically grueling. It's the same way, though. We have a different challenge with our project consultants. We never wanted employees when we set out, which is crazy. So we built a system that rewards hard work. And we'll have guys on paper anyway that will make sometimes more than what I made in the year, and I'm good with that. So they're paid based on their performance. And so that in itself kind of self-polices that. But the flip side of that, somebody that's not been paid maybe that way, that's a challenge. They got to go and sell that to their wife, their family, and they got to have the guts to stand up and then, believe in themselves enough to be able to do it. Once they do it, it becomes much easier, but it's just like anything else. If you've never done it before and you don't have the experience, it sounds like a lot of talk. So it really kind of depends on who, and what we're interviewing for. Right. We had an open door more than what we wanted during COVID for whatever reason. It's not been the case. This is one of the first seasons. The last 2 really were coming in where there may be a couple people that we had. We grew by 40% last year. And so we'd be fine with what we have, but we still want to add 2 or 3 more people. And that 2 or 3 is spread over a market. Like I don't really even need anybody in our Illinois market. I need 1 person in our Kentucky market, maybe 1 in our Tennessee market. So it really depends the position, that we're applying for.
Yeah. Were you guys in business when the May 8th storm hit in 2009?
We were. Yeah, we'd been in business about a year at that point.
For those of you who don't know, May 2009, we had this giant windstorm called a derecho that came through southern Illinois, and I don't know, it was probably a 15 or 20 mile swath of 100-mile-an-hour winds for about 30 minutes. And about every roof in Southern Illinois blew off. And there's only so many roofing companies, and they just kind of popped up just everywhere. There'd be a porta potty on the side of the road had a roofing sign on it, like, "Hey, we're in business putting on roofs." And even with that, there wasn't enough. But I'm imagining, did that kind of springboard your business, or how did you guys deal with managing something like that?
It did in this market. At the time, I was actually living in Missouri, and I had two gentlemen that lived here. One of them was my father-in-law, and they were selling for us at the time. We really didn't have a real interest in growing our market here. We had a different business model. We did primarily insurance work. So if you think about hail damage at an auto body shop, that drove a lot of the business that we had. But because of that, though, we were in metropolitan areas, Oklahoma City, St. Louis, Missouri, El Paso, Texas. That's where we were operating. Southern Illinois, just because our roots were here, really wasn't on our radar. But we had a couple of guys here that we trusted, and so we kind of sold through that. And still, we really didn't dig roots down here till about 2010, which was when I relocated back into the area after my daughter. All my kids worked for us, and she had relocated back because she was going to get married. And so we knew there was going to be some time in the future we're probably going to have grandkids. And with what I was doing, I could do anywhere. So we decided, well, we'll do it from here and we'll manage this. What happens over the next 2 or 3 years, we begin to change our business model. And that was a scary thing in and of itself, too. Today, when we started, 99% of our business was all insurance. Today, 5% of our business is insurance. 95% is retail, which means if you had an insurance claim, we would come out and not do what everybody else typically does and work directly for the insurance company. We're working for the homeowner, and we're not just going to put the roof on the way they say it should be put on. We're not just going to do it for what they say they're going to pay, And so what we wanted to do is build a model that it was more relational. I wanted to build customers for life, and so I wanted to be able to sell to the grandkids. And so in order to be able to do that, we had to change our model. So we stalled on our growth for about 3 years. It was a big deal. It was like turning the Titanic. It was like turning the ship, and sometimes I wondered if it was the Titanic. But when we flipped it around and finally got everything kind of in place, what happened is we began to shut down all those other markets. We began to realize this is what our focus is going to be. And so we kind of reinvented ourselves in a rural area. And glad we did. It's the right model for us.
Yeah, I remember when Larry had first started Home Renew, and it was just amazing. I don't know if he ever did one commercial on TV. It was almost 100% word of mouth. You do a roof, the homeowners love it because you're out there till midnight picking up nails in the yard and sweeping up their sidewalk and doing the things they'd never seen anybody do before. And all of a sudden, their neighbor comes over, "Who did your roof?" And it just exploded. And so that type of attention to detail and customer service, like you're talking about, was huge for growing that. And you were talking about how kind of things are changing a little bit from time to time. What do you think about college these days? And are college degrees as important anymore? Do you think we should, is it okay for kids to start off in a trade, in an industry? It's kind of been like the redheaded stepchild for years. Like, if you graduate high school and don't go to college, you must be kind of dumb, or you didn't have any other options or whatever. And I think things are changing. People are starting to see that college might be the biggest ripoff that ever was. There are some good aspects of that. But what do you think about people getting involved in trade, construction, those type of things, and focusing on that and building that into a career?
Oh, I mean, I think you're seeing a trend that's starting to shift that way. History always repeats itself, and that used to be a part of our society definitely 50 years ago. Whether it's shop class or economics, things that were really hands-on that helped people. Really shaped kind of their future careers. And I think you're right, there was a mindset. I also think I also think the government got involved in a lot of the education system in such a way that it kind of ruined a whole bunch of stuff. And so now, I know tradespeople that in 3 years, they can be making six figures, where their buddies could have went to school, and what they've got to show for it is a 6 figures worth of debt, and a $50,000 a year job. And so I don't think there's a right or wrong. I think you just got to figure out there's not one that's lesser than the other. It's definitely, I don't think, based on, economics. You don't have to go to college to make really, really good money. And some people that just, they're not meant for college, just like some people aren't meant to work with their hands. And so I don't think we should, discourage either one, but it's more about, I think, finding, where your gifts and your talents are. And then, having people on the sidelines cheering people on to go pursue that.
Yep.
We tell our craftsmen, I tell our guys that work with their hands every day, typically what happens is guys that work with their hands, they learn, by hands-on. And so then they become very good working with their hands. And the thing that drives them, that they love most about what they do, if you ask them, is they like to step back and see what I created. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's just super, super important to match guys in the right spots. But the flip side of that is generally guys that are great craftsmen or poor communicators. Now, this is not everybody, but that's typical. You would be great with your hands, poor communicating. And so we teach our guys every day in our production meetings that you're craftsmen and you're professionals. And today you're going out and you're serving ladies and gentlemen. So you need to have that mindset. It's not one or the other. It's not that I'm a great craftsman, but I'm going to talk with a foul mouth. I'm going to, dress with, very unprofessional. I'm going to smoke on the job. So I'm going to do all these. No, you're a professional. You're going to dress like a professional, you're going to act like a professional, and you're going to talk like a professional. So we're going to develop that side as much as we want you to be good at crown molding, be good at roofing, be good at whatever the task is you have at hand. And so I think it gives a real sense of purpose and a real sense of dignity, to the people that are working. And you can have both. It's a cop-out and an excuse to say, well, I'm just not good at that. Well, that just means you need to work on it.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you set standards like that, do you see pushback from people? Or do you see people almost like they were hoping you would have said that to them?
We don't see as much, but again, it's because we spend so much time on the front end. So it's not a smoke and a mirror. If I have to talk you into a job in an interview process, I got to talk you into staying. And so it doesn't matter which position we're interviewing for, we're asking for a 2-year commitment at the end of that. And so, and we're telling them, like, we're sitting here talking today about the position that's open, but I'm interviewing today for where I see where we're going to be at 5 years from now. So I have no interest in filling a job. I'd go a year without filling a job. I'm not looking for somebody looking for a job. I'm looking for somebody looking for a career. And if you're looking for a career and we're going to grow, we only promote from within. So this is very, very important, that we have people around, because I'm getting your highlight reel in the interview, just like you're getting my highlight reel as a business owner. It's kind of like getting married. So once the honeymoon's over, though, you want that to work, you got to work at it. And I said, we're going to know 6 months from now what you're really like.
Yeah.
Or 12 months from now, I'm going to know. So leadership is not microwaved overnight. It happens through a process, and I need to be able to observe that process. So for me, that 2 years is an investment. And so I don't need you just doing the task. I can find anybody to do a task. I want an investment that I'm going to see a return on for year 3, year 4, year 5. And so I think if you approach the interview process like that, you get a whole lot less pushback. Like I told the guy today, and it was his first interview. I said, if we decide to move forward, you're going to take off work and spend a whole day in the truck with one of our guys, driving around. Whatever the position is you applied for, you're going to spend a whole day with somebody doing that position. You're just going to ask them. You're going to see it up front. You're going to know exactly what you're getting into, and you're going to be able to ask them. And there's going to be 2 things going on. You're going to figure out whether this is something you see yourself doing long term. And my guy's going to come back and tell me whether you're somebody he wants to be working alongside of.
Yeah.
Because if you don't fit our culture, if I can't hire, I only hire people I want to have lunch with on my day off.
Yeah.
If my guys don't want to have lunch with you on your day off, you're not a good fit. You may be a great guy, you're just not a good fit. So we're not going to hold you back, and you're not going to hold us up.
Yeah.
I said at the end of that, then we're going to give you a personality profile. And then we're going to give you an assessment. Then we'll invite you in for a face-to-face interview where there'll be a couple more of us. And then we throw the last one, we're going to meet your wife. We're going to take you guys out to dinner. But in all of that, too, we told them, we're a leadership development company. I mean, really, if you ask us what we are, we're in the people business. We resolve anxiety, and we create amazing customer experiences. We're not a roofing company. It's a commodity. Anybody can put on roofing. We're in a people business. So, but we're really a leadership development company. We just happen to provide home improvement solutions. So what I mean by that is like the first 6 weeks of your training with us is a boot camp. I have one guy that it's his total assignment is to train new people. Said after that, there's training coaches. You'll spend one day every week for the next 90 days in the truck with them. You're out doing your job, but one day a week you're with them doing nothing but being mentored and following them. And you're going to read a book every 2 weeks, and we have 200 of them. So you can listen to them, you can read them. And I said, and they're going to be all over the board. They're not going to be about how to be a better roofer. They're going to be how to read body language. They're going to be about communication. They're going to be about customer service. I said, we're even going to throw some in like the 5 love languages, because we want you to be as good as home as you are at work. You got a problem at home, you'll bring it to work. You got a problem at work, you're going to take it home. So it's a holistic approach we take. So if you're not dedicated to leadership and you're not willing to put in the same time, because we believe potential is not what you are, it's what you become. And so personal development always precedes professional development. You take that kind of approach, you don't get a lot of pushback because it's no mystery what the expectations are.
Yeah, man, I wish government agencies could take the same approach as private businesses. We talked about this a little bit before we got started. I worked for a police department for almost 30 years of my life, and it's very difficult. Talking about smoke and mirrors too. We'll put out a job opening for police officer, and it's like, well, what's the job description of a police officer? Well, enforce laws. Respond to citizen complaints for this. And people read all these things and like, well, I've seen cops on TV. I kind of know what cops do. And then we hire them. We put them through a police academy. We pay all this money. We get them in a car. And then they have like, oh, I didn't, what's this computer thing all about? Like, what's all this technology stuff all about? Oh, well, you mean I got to actually talk to people and talk somebody off of a bridge, or like people, so the job shadowing thing you talk about in your book, that's something that I think we don't do good enough a job in law enforcement and a lot of government jobs is, hey, why don't you come in and we'll just show you behind the curtain for a minute what this is really going to be like. Because, we just did a reaction video the other day of a shooting at Lakewood Church in Dallas, Texas. Somebody walked in with an AR and started shooting the place up. And the response from some of the officers, you could tell they had never thought about themselves ever being in that position ever in their life. It was somebody failed to tell them this might be part of your job. Like you might have to do this someday. So the job shadowing, that's, I think is critical. It's just a common courtesy. We need to let you know what you're getting into. So if later on down the road, we need to say, hey, remember that conversation that we've had the conversation. It's nothing is brand new. And I think that's a great aspect of what you guys are doing.
Yeah, so we do what we call a strategic meeting every quarter. And so I'll take my key leaders and we'll go away overnight for 2 days. And then so we've divided our calendar year into a quarter. So our goals is not just, hey, we want to do this in 2024. It's not, this is what we're going to do from January to March. And then we come in and we reset our priorities. And then we see how we're doing against that goal, where we need to make up or we're ahead or whatever the case might be. So there's a lot of training. And it was in one of those that actually came up. We were going back and forth through, how do we make our interview process better? How do we make this stick? How do we get the candidates that we want? We made lots of changes through the years, but it's almost like a filter. Even some of our ads, when you go read them, it's designed to repel the people that won't fit and to intrigue the people that would. And of course that kind of comes out in your first interview. Like, well, out of 100 different companies, why'd you choose us? Why'd you have an interest? You wake up one day and want to be a roofer or work for a roofing company? Mm-hmm. And it's, well, I've seen the mission statement. I like your guys' culture. What do you know about our culture? Well, I follow you on Facebook. I've read your reviews. And so what they're really telling us, they're identifying with who we are as a company, not necessarily what we do, which is the order in which we want it. Yeah.
As far as the retail side of what you do, what kind of marketing works? I know, obviously, like I talked about before, with Larry, it was word of mouth. That was like 99.9% of how they got new business in. And I'm wondering, from your perspective, what do you see actually getting a return on investment? Like, is it TV or radio or billboards or podcasts, do you think? Or what do you think, how is the word getting out that you guys have this great business that's going to provide a quality product to people?
Well, I think our guys do a really, really good job of creating a remarkable experience that the customers want to talk about. Of course, then we have a referral program around that. And so we obviously sell a lot through referral and word of mouth. But to scale as much work as we need to do, it's hard just to do that. So for us, television is a great way to get the message out to the masses. Again, a lot of it depends on your strategy, your demographics, who you're trying to reach. It's becoming more and more difficult because it's so segmented. You have so many different places to watch and view with streaming and everything else that you have to be a little bit more creative. We have our own mini billboards. We probably have 50 of those across 3 states.
I've got one at Tombstone Gun Range.
Yeah. There's like 50 of those.
Yeah.
I don't know if we've, to date, if we've ever rented a full billboard. It's something we're looking at now because of the way television is going. Like I was saying a while ago, there's some markets, like for instance our Carmine market. It's the DMA there is, even though they live in Southern Illinois, all their television comes out of Evansville, Indiana. And the radio here doesn't really reach there. And so the guy that actually worked for us last year, sold the most in our company history, lived in Carmine. He got very little benefit of any of our advertising. So it's forcing us to look at maybe some more billboards. I think they have more value now than probably what they've had in the last 5 or 6 years for some of those reasons. And then we're just big on being involved in the community. And so I know I personally will do business with people and companies that I align with their values, their causes, what they're about. And there's some that I will intentionally skip over because I don't align. And so I think a lot of people align with us because of our patriotism. We're not, our trucks are wrapped that way. We support the pledge. We give away a flag with every roof that we do. I mean, we're not hiding who we are, and we're not burning flags over at our place, so to speak. But then we're just also very involved in the community. We didn't want to just write checks to help people. I know personally how it impacted my kids to be involved on the front lines of giving back and serving. And so we could write a check and we could tell our team about it, or we could provide an opportunity where our team was the hands and the feet of that and give them an opportunity to maybe take their family and then also be able to maybe to take that home. And it moved it from selfish to selfless and kind of put everything in priority. And it gave a sense of purpose to, maybe I installed a roof today, maybe I went and sold something, maybe I did an inspection, but what I really did is last week I dug a well in India. I helped tornado victims in Mayfield. I give smoked turkeys because we smoked all night for, a bunch of people in Western Kentucky. Or we did a roof last week for a women's domestic shelter, that we put on. And I was asking, we literally just did that last week. I was asking, I said, so if you'd had to pay for this roof, because I knew what it would cost, they called us out there to bid it. And we bid it, and we decided we wanted to roof it forward and take care of it for them. He said, well, what would we have paid for the roof now that we didn't have to pay for it? Paid for 6 months of our budget to be able to help ladies. And they're a 30-day transitional home for battered women, basically. And so that stuff in and of itself is not why you do it. People choose to do business with companies, I think, that are responsible, that give back, and they just feel good about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And people I remember you said in your book that people really don't care about what the price of something is as long as there's value associated with it. It's like, you're mad when you go to the movie theater and spend $8 on a Coke because it's a 25-cent Coke. That's why you're mad about the price. And you're like, my wife's always kicking me in the side, like, would you quit complaining about prices and stuff? I'm like, French fries shouldn't cost $4.50. Like, this is, that's why I'm upset about it. So I'm sure, the value, things are getting more expensive. Inflation, this inflation is only 3%. Well, the supplies I got to buy at Home Depot are 400% higher than they were 2-3 years ago. So even with that being said, are you still able to overcome and mitigate the expense of things? I'm sure you are, just by providing a good value for what you're doing, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, again, if you go back to culture, if you have a highly engaged team, our team, I believe, gives 120%. So they don't do what they just have to do to keep their job. They believe that they have a purpose and whatever they're doing represents them. So they're giving more than the average person. Automatically, that gives a business owner a competitive advantage. All the way down to it would be easier to throw whatever's left over into a dump trailer and not have to deal with it. But they're going to manage the half box of nails and the half roll of felt and have to put it in the truck and have to take it out again and use it on the next job site. They're not necessarily getting paid more for that, but they understand that. So all those things help. But I think the other thing is we've not sold on price in years. I remember when COVID happened, we had one of the big wigs from one of the distributors come down from, I can't remember if he was from Michigan or Chicago. And at that time, there was a price increase like every 2 months, and we were raising our prices every 2 months. And so a lot of people in our business, they were good at a trade, and then they thought they'd be great in business. And they got enough roofs out there, when they finally start having problems, they realize I'm not a very good business person. And so I'm going to change my cell phone and take a magnet off my truck, and I'm no longer in business. Sorry about that lifetime warranty. And that happens a lot. And so we knew that wasn't our game plan. So we're just going to have to raise prices as they went up. Anyway, he came down and he said, do you need us? Are you concerned about this? Do you need us to maybe kind of help with some training or something, to explain to your customers why you're so high? And I said, honestly, when we go out, we're generally the highest when we go out anyway. We don't sell on price. We sell on value and experience. It's not a cost; it's an investment. We go out. We don't go out and put a bid in somebody's mailbox. We're going to crawl in their attic. We're going to spend an hour and a half inspecting the property. We're going to shoot videos of the property. We're going to show homeowner what we found. We're going to give them 3 options of what they can do. Now we can extend their roof, repair it, and spray a biodegradable oil on it and get them 5 more years instead of replace it if the roof qualifies. So it's not just that we have to just replace the roof. And I said, because of that, people buy from us for value. It's not, if they're coming out, there's like, well, you're 10, they're 9, and they're 8. They already knew that probably before they called us. But we're not selling apples for apples.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So when you're competing on price, it's a race to the bottom, and it's a commodity. And so we just never focused that way.
Yeah.
Just because somebody else can do it for $8,000 doesn't mean we can, because we're not willing to do it the way they're doing it.
Yeah.
And we're going to answer the phone when you call. And 5 years from now, you're going to have a warranty.
Yeah.
And we're going to do it right when you're not looking. So there's so many aspects of all of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it makes it tougher, but I think for our clientele and how we sell, it really isn't about the price. Price is only an issue in the absence of value.
Yeah.
If you're a really good job of explaining the value and you're honest with people, and then you can put a track record behind that.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many people. One of them that comes to mind, we bid the job and we were $4,000 higher, I think. I want to say that job was a $20,000 job. It was a big job. And then we get a call back. They'd hired another company and they did half the roof. They fired them. They had hired them for 16, had paid them 8. They wouldn't change what they were doing until they signed off. So we haven't done what we asked you to do to begin with, and fired them. Lost the 8,000. Turned around and rehired us for the 20. We tore off what they did, and then we redid it. So they gambled on 16,000. At the end, they spent 28,000, and they went through all the headache with the other people.
Wow.
And we see that kind of stuff more than we should.
Yeah. It's funny listening to you talk. It's the way that I approach buying a lot of different things. I like a specific brand of car. I'm a Toyota fan, because I know the value of buying that vehicle. That's going to last me a long time, and that's one of my biggest buying points. So when I approach things, I'm not always looking at the cheapest thing. I want to look at what is the best thing for me to use, best thing that's going to give me the most length of use and value for what I'm spending. It's the value per dollar spent more than it is the cheapness of what you're getting, because a lot of times you get what you pay for. That's an old adage, but it's true.
I've been the roll the dice type of guy. Yeah. Like if something breaks down in my car, I'm not a mechanic by any means, but I think I might be able to fix this. What's the worst that can happen? I can mess it up, and then I got to call a mechanic, and then usually you're like, man, if I just started off doing this right in the first place. So it's just that urge to want to. I think for a lot of people, it's just that they don't want to feel like they're going to get ripped off.
Yeah.
And if you can mitigate that, if you can cut to like get to the trust factor, like, listen, we're not, sorry for all you car salesmen out there, but this is not a car sale gimmick type of thing. Like, this is a real valuable thing we're going to give you. If you can get to that, people will pay the extra money. They will understand.
Yep.
They just don't want to feel like they're getting taken advantage of, getting ripped off. They do not want that. And if you can get rid of that, they'll pay almost double or triple if they know, if you really know that it's going to be worth it. People will pay, just like you said, as long as they're getting value from it. No doubt about it.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you've got to, if I want to gamble on cheap toilet paper versus expensive toilet paper, that's one gamble.
Yeah.
If I want to gamble on the thing that protects everything that matters to me most, which is my roof, everything that's the most important to me is underneath that roof. Those heirlooms are in the attic that have been passed down from generation to generation. Those pictures on the wall, those people that sleep in those beds, everything that I've worked for is in there. So do I want to risk that? And at the end of the day, it's really not that you're higher, because you're not bidding the same thing that somebody else is bidding.
Right.
No, you're not willing to take the shortcut. And we walked away from jobs like, well, I don't really want that. I don't want that extra ice and water, and I don't need that around my chimney. And like, we understand what you're saying. We can't install the roof that way. If I can't put this on the way I'd put it on for my own mother, we would rather walk away as friends. And maybe we'll get an opportunity to earn your business somewhere in the future, because we built our name on a reputation. And I know what you're saying now, but when it leaks a year from now, you're going to have buyer's remorse. And you're going to forget that we told you so. Mm-hmm. And so it's just better that we go, another way.
I think it's really awesome that I'm hearing all the words you say, and you're talking about being the hands and feet. You're talking about all this other stuff. And that's straight out of Scripture. That's straight out of the Bible. We were talking earlier, and I recently heard a friend tell me, the best business book in the world is the Bible, because it's got every principle that you need to get through life with integrity and with honesty and truth. And so if we use that, and everything that you're saying and everything that I know personally from the guys that work with you, you're built that culture, and that's a beautiful thing. So in that, there's another aspect of this. What do you do with your employees to inspire them to be better people when they're not at work, and when they're not, because men, we have a tendency to. Another short story of the guy at our church. He told me, he's like, when I go home from a hard day at work, I sit in my driveway and I think, okay, now I'm going to my second job. And a lot of guys don't think that. They don't think, hey, when I go home, I've got another job to do. I've got a duty to my wife. I've got a duty to my children to show up for them the same way I do. So how do you build that culture?
Yeah, I think the repetition is one thing. I mean, obviously you try to model it. In any kind of organization, what gets repeated is what gets rewarded. So you build an incentive program and recognition around what you want to see replicated and repeated. Mm-hmm. And then you model it, which I don't know where that would have came from. I mean, you think about these principles. Somewhere. And then you take your key people and you teach them, and then they turn around and teach their key people. It's kind of like discipleship is what it sounds like.
Yep, absolutely.
But we don't separate the two. So, we don't do it all the time, but we have what we call a huddle every day. We start our day 15 minutes. Almost everybody in the company is on that. It's a conference call. And then once a week, our production team gets together for an hour and a half, usually in the mornings. And then guys that are associated with sales and admin that afternoon for 2 hours. We break bread together. We go over reviews. We do a training component. We have fun. We give a lot of stuff away. Again, the reward system kind of comes in there. But then we'll also do things that we call like lightning round, and we'll change the questions up. But, it's about personal stuff. And so guys will run around the room and talk about personal stuff, whatever that question is for the day. I'm trying to think which one we, used for last week, but we may throw something out like, the one for tomorrow that we're going to do is, how has your definition of success changed over the years? We'll run that around the room. It doesn't have anything to do with the tasks that we're doing, but it causes guys to think about that. I've got all of our guys carry a challenge coin. So once a year, I usually run a program, a contest, to make them earn it. And production, sales, everybody involved. And everybody qualifies when we go. And if everybody doesn't qualify, nobody goes. And so this year we took them to Gatlinburg, and we rented ATVs and rented a lodge. We were all in a lodge. But the purpose of that wasn't to build a better business. It was to build better men. And so at night we'd sit around a campfire, and like we talked about, we give historical illustrations of I love the one about Jonathan Edwards, if you've ever studied his story, 5 generations and him in a comparison with a guy named Max Jukes that lived at the same time. And they studied all of his descendants. It's a fascinating story. If you haven't looked at it, you should. And then we talked about around a campfire at night, like, what do you want the 5th generation from now to remember about you? What kind of influence do you want to leave? And so we give away this coin, and on one side of the coin has our mission statement. And then all around the circle of this has all of our core values. So 2-3 years ago, I boiled them down to an acronym of integrity. So it was easy to remember. One word, I for integrity, T for teamwork, so on and so forth. But the other side of that has an imprint where it has a couple, and then it has a family, and then it has, you can see a flag and a military person. And we tell all of our guys that our definition of success here is not what you've made. But at the end of your career, you can look back and say, you know what? I was a better husband because I worked at integrity. And I was a better dad because I worked at integrity. And I was a better citizen because I was a better patriot. And we do these coin check challenges where guys are supposed to keep these in their pocket all the time. And we have a group chat that we all use on a daily basis. And they'll take a picture of that. But that's a reminder of why that's important. So that's one of the ways that we'll do that, is my point. And we keep them talking about it, and they don't forget it. So,
are there consequences if they don't have the challenge coin in their
just
pocket?
shame. Yeah, pretty much just shame.
I'm
not always the one calling it out. It's some other guy.
Not 100 push-ups on your knuckles or something like that.
Should be.
That's a very military thing, man. Those challenge coins. That's a very that's straight infused out of the military. So that's very cool. The other thing I know that you're heavily involved in is the Man Up camps, and I know that that's one of those things that I unfortunately was planning on going last year, and we had a tactical weekend that same weekend at Tombstone, so wasn't able to attend. I plan on hopefully attending this year because I hear you had 80-something guys out there, and was just an awesome thing. So it's something I'd like to give you an opportunity to talk about, and the vision behind how that came about.
Yeah, so we do it on a 110-acre farm that we own out there where we do our retreats, and we border the Shawnee National Forest. And the idea is every campsite is broken down into no more than 10 guys. So every campsite has its own captain. So it's very kind of regimented. It's called an adventure camp. So, I mean, we will throw axes. We have a 2-man buck saw. I mean, we have arm wrestling contests. I mean, so we do guy kind of stuff. But we also have put on almost like a rock concert under we have a big tent out. So it's roughing it. It's primitive. Guys bring their, their tents, and we have fire rings set up, and we have all the firewood, and we have brought in porta potties, and we brought in water. We smoked a hog, I think, the middle of the second day. And then
Sign me up, right?
Yeah, that's all we need to hit. Barbecue.
Let's go. So I mean, it was a great time. And then the rest of the time the guys are cooking around their campfire. So the magic kind of happens around the campfire in the evenings. So the guys all have journals, and so they're always themed. Like last year, we talked about really 4 major things. We talked about endurance. We talked about purpose. We talked about failure, and we talked about serving. And so there was 4 what we called big talks that come under the big top tent. And that was associated with a band, but you also had videos of guys kind of sharing their story. It was just a real challenge, for guys. On Saturdays, we always do what we call solitude. So we'll do a talk in the middle of the day, and then the guys are sent all on the property. Everybody goes finds their own place under a tree, in a creek, in the woods. They have a little journal, and they spend an hour. Nothing else going on. And they're writing kind of what God's telling them, probably about them. Because those 4 talks are designed to be facilitated again around the campfire, which is what happens. And so guys begin to open up and really get real, you know. And we don't allow phones in. It's no technology, so it's a technology break from that Friday evening. They're done Sunday, about noon. Yeah, it's just it's not just a bonding time. It's just a real powerful time because guys just get real about where they're stuck, and they're not ashamed to share with somebody. They see a guy up there on their video after video, talking about what they've went through. Other guys like, you know what, it's okay to do this, and they do that in their group of 10, or maybe in that particular group, somebody else is just able to share, how they've made it through a hard time. And so everybody kind of has their role, and you never know till you get there. So we're believing this year 300 to 500. So
Wow.
Pretty big growth is what we're after. We're doing what we call Grub Fest the 18th of April in Marion at the Celebration Center. And so we've never done that before. It's 6 to 7:30, and basically we said, anybody that came last year that wants to come, let's get the band back together, so to speak. Anybody that has an interest that didn't get to go, that's kind of what that night's there for too. There's no cost to it. You have to get a ticket and go online on Brushfire or go on our Facebook, Man Up. And we're going to feed them for the night. We've got some, I won't say too much, we've got some raffles. I think there's going to be some custom duck calls, I think. There may be a custom fishing rod. There's just some cool stuff we're going to give away. But there'll also be videos that'll be playing during the course of the evening of guys that went to camp. This is why I almost didn't go. This is what I got when I did go. This is how it impacted me and changed my life. And of course, there'll be an opportunity that night if guys want to sign up. So it's a great opportunity if you just want to bring somebody. You don't have to commit to anything. And then you may want to serve. What I mean by serving is you may want to lead your own, campsite. And so we'll be signing guys up for that night. We'll actually have one-of-a-kind hats for guys that sign up that night that we won't sell as merch. The guys will be able to get. So, that's really all about helping guys like we talked about when we got here. How do we get guys to be present? How do we get guys to go home and lead their household?
Yep.
Serve in their community, get involved in their church,
Yep.
Mentor their kids, speak life, over them and words of encouragement. How they go home and be the husband that they were supposed to be. It's like, well, you don't make me happy anymore. I didn't see that in the vows. What I seen is Jesus said, listen, this is going to be the standard. Lay your life down for the church, for your wife, the way I laid my life down for the church. There's your standard.
Yeah.
So it has very little to it being reciprocated. It has everything to do with you serving that other person. So we can help men understand that you made a lifelong commitment, and that better for worse meant better or worse, and you don't see leaving as an option, then it's a whole lot easier to focus on solutions and work through the hard times so you can get to the good times.
Yeah.
And most of what we find out as men that we have as junk and baggage is stuff that happened when we were kids. And so we understand the importance of mending fences, being better role models. Sometimes maybe just going back and apologizing. So anyway, we're excited. That's kind of how that's why it started. This year, next year, we will do 2 camps. It's the goal. And the camp is not just for men, but next year you'll be able to bring your son or your daughter. So you have to be 18 to go to this one. So this one will be the same, only different, and it'll be designed, no technology, bonding time between you and your daughter and you and your son, and kind of the same experience with the same principles. And so we felt like we needed to do one more of these so we didn't have guys picking and choosing.
Yeah.
It's hard to sell somebody on something they've never experienced. So the fact that we had 90 guys show up was far less than what I wanted, but it was a big win.
Yeah.
And so word of mouth, it's almost like the business principle. I know there'll be no problem doubling that. We're just hoping that we, triple and quadruple it this year.
Yeah. Yeah. I know a lot of the guys that came back from that at the church were raving about it that next week. And it made me like, I wish I hadn't missed it because it sounded like a great atmosphere and opportunity to not only bond with some other men that are in the same fight, but also kind of find yourself.
Yeah. So one of our speakers last year, Kerry Martin, you guys know.
Oh, yeah.
He spoke, and he wasn't able to be there at the whole camp. So he walked in kind of about an hour before he spoke. And it just, I did a podcast with him a couple weeks ago. It's not aired yet. He talks a little bit about it, but it impacted him so much that he's coming back this year and he's leading his own camp, and bringing some of his own family members and some other guys. And that's really kind of the purpose of that, as men.
Yeah.
And So yeah, you guys need to be at Grub Fest.
Man, yeah, no doubt. It's so cool. It's so cool to see you and organizations like yours actually getting more active. There's a lot of companies, even in Southern Illinois, that throw a lot of money at stuff and put their names on things and banners here and but man, what are people doing to actually improve people's lives, not just here on earth, but for eternity as well? Like, we've got to start to focus on that, not just storing up treasures on earth, but we got to start storing up treasures in heaven. And once you get people, the cool thing about those get-togethers is people see other guys involved and like, man, if John is involved in this, I think I can do it too. It's just like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like all of a sudden people aren't afraid to raise their hand. They're not afraid to be involved. They just want to see other people involved doing the same thing. And next thing, instead of just one dude that's a leader and doing things in his family, his community, now everybody's like, yeah, you know what? I'm not embarrassed about my faith anymore. I'm not embarrassed to stand up for my family, my wife. I think I'm going to do that too, just because I've seen other guys doing it. So those type of mentoring type of programs where people can see other people standing up are critical. We're seeing it in stuff we're doing with Righteous Savages and at the range. People just, they want to hear other people that are just like them going through the same things, and everybody wants to be motivated. You get guys, Kerry talks a lot about guys, coaching football, like football players, they want discipline. They want to be motivated. There's like this intrinsic thing where people just want to be led, and culture and society just smashes us down so hard sometimes that people feel like, for whatever reason, like, I better not say anything or I better not do anything. And hopefully with what you're doing with this stuff, people can just shrug that off and break the chains here of what's holding people down. And it's so cool to see you really promoting those programs.
Yeah, I personal invitation. So in February, we just did the first one. I write about it in a book. It's in the last chapter. We talk about the ripple effect. And we had a vision for that before we ever bought this property. And the idea was, if we could get leaders together, if we could get business owners together, just people that were aspiring to be leaders and understand the influence they have. And with that influence comes responsibility. And what they could do with that if they would serve in their communities, wherever that is. We can make a ripple effect. So if you think about a ripple, you throw a rock into a pond, it's not just the initial splash. It's the ripple that will eventually reach all the way to the shore. And so we did that first event this year. We had about 45 people. I had four other speakers that came in. One of the guys was the former president of the Yum Corporation and Kentucky Fried Chicken. He had 1 million people underneath him. I had a guy from Birmingham, Alabama that was a firefighter that turned and started a nonprofit called Manufactured Good, where he basically trains blue-collar workers for 6 months and then turns them out and helps place them into jobs. They build high-end cabinetry and restaurant furniture, and just neat story. Kerry spoke at that from a coach's perspective. I had a guy that leads men all over the country on adventures, from bear hunting in Alaska to, elk hunting in Colorado to fly fishing, and, his magic happens around a campfire at night. The point is that all those guys found what their purpose was and what their song was and began to sing it. And the purpose of that event was to bring people in and get them to understand, what's your song? What's your purpose? What are you doing to pay it forward? And so next year we want to see that grow exponentially. Those guys all donated their time to come in because we were all paying it forward. We served them lunch. We gave them a book. We spent 8 hours together. But people walked away from there. It's like, I need to do something. I can do something. I can occupy the space that I'm in, to your point. I have influence. You don't have to have a title to have influence. A lot of people have titles. They don't have any influence. And people won't follow them. They'll do what they say when they're around them, but they don't respect them and they won't follow them. But you got people that'll follow people into hell with a water pistol because they have influence, because they've invested in their life, because they care for them. So you didn't have to have a title for that. But we had coaches, we had principals of schools, we had business leaders, we had retired people. It's like, what am I going to do at the next phase? Man, I'd encourage you guys to be at that next year because of what you're doing. Man, you can influence a lot of people with that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, Terry, this has been awesome. So we appreciate you coming out, talking with us, sharing your story. So you've got, Man Up, you got Grub Fest, you got, Integrity Roofing and Exteriors and Home Renew. Where's a good place for people to find out about your business, these things you got going on, that type of stuff?
Yeah, so if you want to find out about the business, ourintegritymatters.com. That's our main business website. You can go to homerenew.com. Colchineer, if you go to you go to terrygwaltney.com, books, resources, the stuff we have there, you can find there. Man Up Adventure Camp, all the stuff about, Man Up. And then if you go to Legacy Farm, Stonefort, it has a lot of the events that are on there. So Man Up will show up on there as well as an event. We're doing a Worship Under the Stars in September. If you guys have ever heard of Stephen McWhirter, contemporary artist, and Renee. We're doing that outside. We've never done that before. It's going to be out in the farm on the pasture in the evening under the stars. We're not charging the general public to come to that. Hopefully we'll get an opportunity to rally troops around purpose and vision and paying it forward. But that's a give back opportunity that we're going to do. That'll be in September. But that's the kind of stuff you can find on the Legacy Farm website.
Yeah, that's gonna be a busy year or two, brother.
Yep, a lot going on.
Things are cruising right along, man. Yep. So it's awesome, man. We're inspired by you and what you guys are doing. We appreciate it. Once again, the book Colchineer, definitely check that out. Great read. You'll definitely get a lot out of that. So appreciate everybody for watching tonight. We'll link in the description all the contact info for Terry and how you can stay in touch with him and what he has going on this year and beyond. So appreciate you watching. Remember, take Jesus with you everywhere you go and act like you believe. Thanks.